Good Sunday evening to you from Istanbul, Turkey. I am back in Istanbul, Turkey, and very excited to be broadcasting to you from what is a lovely setting on this Sunday evening. No, that is not Sultan Ahmet behind me, but yes, I am actually in the Sultanahmet area on the historic peninsula here in Istanbul, and we have a mosque and a lovely sunset right behind us. We actually have the Sea of Marmara right behind us as well, although you don't have such a good picture of that just because the angle and whatnot. I see a couple people are tuned in. If you are, can you please let me know whether the volume and picture are okay? Michelle says hello, nice to catch you live. Michelle, thank you very much for catching me live indeed. I have not been sticking to my Sunday stream schedule in over the past few weeks. I apologize for that. I guess I might as well recap. Michelle says the volume is good. I guess I might as well recap what I've been up to and where I've been over the past couple weeks. Yeah, value is pretty low, but I can handle it. Value or volume? I assume you're saying the volume, and if that's the case, I'll try to speak a little closer into the iPhone microphone that I have. This is a low budget operation. Michelle's saying value, not low on my end. I hope the value is not low, but if indeed it is, it's volume. My bad. The commenter is saying if the value is indeed low, well, that's something I better address. Just as is the case with the volume. I think I've got the volume decently addressed for the time being. This is a bit of a low budget operation, but yeah, let me know if the volume is all right now. I think it should be. Anywhere, as for where I have been as of late, well, I've been in this region, I'd say. I've been in the Middle East, only in two countries over the past month or so. My time was split between Turkey and Israel, and I was traveling across Turkey and across Israel. I guess some of you are to some extent familiar with what I was up to in Turkey a couple weeks back. I was traveling across Turkey, predominantly in the south of the country, but also in the central and I guess western parts to some extent. And I was traveling with Josh Sigurdson of World Alternative Media, and that was a very exciting trip. It was something that I probably had never expected to be looking into, at least on a professional level, and I guess I really wasn't so much looking into it on a professional level, but the topic was fascinating, and that topic was ancient civilizations. Enjoy Istanbul, brother. I'm getting a comment. Actually, I am enjoying Istanbul, and I will be enjoying Istanbul. So maybe the news I should break up front to you with regard to my location is I expect to be spending the better part of the next month in Istanbul. I'm very excited about that for many reasons, one of which is, I mean, look at this setting behind me. This is incredible. Oh, there's so many parts of Istanbul that I love. There's so many parts of Istanbul that I wish I could broadcast to you. And for that matter, I might take it upon myself to try to do some of that. Maybe I go to a format in which I'm doing regular by regular I mean a lot more regular than now. Regular vlogs and live streams, maybe even several a week. I'd like to show you different parts of the city. This is an incredible city, and it's probably my favorite city in the entire world, which I guess I'll be getting into, if not later on in this broadcast, then somewhat in the days and weeks to come. With regard to what I was doing in Turkey a few weeks back, so yeah, I was traveling with Josh Sigurdson of World Alternative Media as he was exploring and producing videos and possibly a documentary or two about ancient civilizations, which is a controversial matter. If you subscribe to the mainstream view, I spent 1 month in Istanbul, lived for 11. Someone's bringing up the Khashoggi issue, which I don't know if I'll be delving into Khashoggi on this broadcast, but maybe we can discuss it if we have some time. But also the commenter was saying lived in Istanbul. So yeah, feel free to chime in about your experience in Istanbul and in Turkey. It's something that is certainly of interest to me. I'm trying not to gawk at my backdrop. It's hard not to. This might be the most beautiful backdrop I've ever had for a live stream. So yeah, back to a few weeks ago. Um, so Josh Sigurdsson and I visited several places in southern Turkey, including Göbekli Tepe, which I have yet to release my video footage from, but that should be out this week. Karahan Tepe, which is a very new spot, and that was a very, very unique experience. I released my video from Karahan Tepe a couple days ago. We also went up Mount Nemrut. That was very exciting. I expect to put out a Mount Nemrut vlog sometime in the coming days. I have already released a Darren Kuyu vlog, and likewise I did a live stream a few weeks back from Cappadocia, from Goreme in Cappadocia. And during that live stream, I discussed some of what I'm discussing now, recapping the trip, even though it wasn't even over at that point. So we're exploring these spots in Turkey, which, if indeed what some people say is true, then it's evidence of there being civilization dating back 10, 12,000 or even more years, which completely goes against what the mainstream academic narrative is about the history of human civilization. So it was very exciting to visit Göbekli Tepe and to see these large T-pillars. Some of them I guess are 15 feet high, 20 feet high. Maybe I'm bungling it. Maybe some of them are even taller than that. These large T-pillars that have been unearthed with very impressive carvings, and people say, well, if this was produced 10,000 years ago, then that's evidence that people back then were not merely hunter-gatherers, and that there was some sort of advanced technology back then, and that indeed civilization dates back way beyond when we're told from way beyond what we are told by the mainstream and by mainline academics. So after Göbekli Tepe, we visited Karahan Tepe, which you know what, I'll throw in the link, and I'm going to pull up the chat right now, and I'm going to throw in the link to my Karahan Tepe video in the chat. And I recommend you watch that, and for a lot more context, I recommend you go over to World Alternative Media on YouTube and watch Josh Sigurdsson's documentary that he's already released on Karahan Tepe. I don't know if I'm going to be able to throw that in the chat as well, but I just threw in my footage, and you can find a link somewhere to World Alternative Media. So at Karahan Tepe, unlike Göbekli Tepe, we were free to walk around and touch everything, and that was an incredible experience. There are current excavations ongoing in Karahan Tepe, and there was just a very recent one in which they unearthed some of the T-pillars, some of which I guess we got to touch with our own hands, which now you cannot do at Göbekli Tepe. Göbekli Tepe has turned into a tourist site, and there's a boardwalk, and you're walking in a circle around the major T-pillars. You can't go down and touch them like you could 20 years back or so, but that is still the case, as in you can still walk up and touch things at this Karahan Tepe site, which is seemingly in the middle of nowhere, and very few people have found it. So I am very grateful, very blessed to have visited it, and to have visited that site when I did. And you know, this is not a matter of my expertise. I don't have any expertise in the subject matters of history of civilization, archaeology, etc. And that probably comes across in my video footage, very amateur video footage that I released in vlog format. And that's just my raw experience that you're seeing in the video. But I'm trying to take this serious, and I'm trying to learn and study some of the controversy surrounding these sites and the claims with regard to their history and with regard to whether or not it is indeed evidence of ancient civilization. And I'm trying to get more versed in the matter, and maybe I'll be coming back or going back to some of these places in the future. I would like to. It was fascinating, and lots of people were very interested in the trip. Your footage from Karhan Tepe was excellent. Oh, this is Rob Sigurdsson. Thank you very much, Rob. It was Rob's son who was the inspiration for the entire trip, and Josh Sigurdsson just did an incredible job making it happen. And likewise, I got to give a shout out to Fred, who was Josh's donor, who also played an integral role in. I watched it too earlier this week. Michelle is saying, yeah, I got to give a shout out to Fred, Josh's donor, who played an integral role in making it happen. Rob's saying the two, Josh and I work well together. Yeah, that was so nice little coincidence that Josh Sigurdsson popped up in this region of the world that I spend so much time in, and it was truly a joy to work with him. And I'm still trying to get some footage sent over to him, just trying to help him out. He was really a man on a mission. He drove us from Istanbul to all these sites in southern Turkey and back. I didn't do any of the driving. Josh drove, the other, Josh Sigurdsson, that is, drove the whole way, drove us all the way up to Mount Nemrut. It was not easy getting up there. At one point, we were driving at night, basically trying to find some random cave in Cappadocia. It was a fascinating experience, and now it's nice to be able to unpack that experience from none other than Istanbul. But I guess I should briefly touch on where I was between then and now. I'm looking forward to your analysis of that area when Josh has you on Wham. Actually, Josh recently had me on Wham to discuss, well, what's going on in modern Turkey and Syria with all the news surrounding the war, the Turkish operation in southern Turkey, how things are playing out with the Kurds and the Turks. So many issues to discuss on that regard. Okay, this is a long comment. Josh, the gypsies have a secret. Okay, Hendra's sending me a lot. I'm gonna have to go over that after this broadcast. Something relating to Moses. I think there's just so much history, and that was something that Josh Sigurdsson was really appreciating. Something I've been harping on for 5 years, how there's such incredible history to go along with the beauty and the many tourist attractions here in Turkey. And part of that is the biblical history, the biblical sites. And I was very grateful that, short as it was, Josh and I paid a quick visit to Haran, the place very close to the Syrian border where, according to the Bible, Abraham moved, and plenty of beautiful gypsies is the... I don't know. I'll figure out this gypsies thing later. Send me info about it, or I don't know if you're trolling. Yeah, so we paid a visit to Haran, which nowadays I guess is just known for the place Abraham lived and having these beehive houses. The beehive houses, those mud huts, were very cool to look at. We went inside a rather touristy one. Yeah, it was amazing. Haran is a place that I had circled several years back as somewhere I wanted to go, and I'd never made it there on the one prior trip I took across southeast Turkey. And we made it there. It was a very short stay, but hey, what can I say? I finally stepped foot in the city where Abraham lived and waited to go to Israel, or I guess back in biblical times it was then Canaan. Anyway, yeah, so much history, so much to see from the perspective of a tourist, let alone a journalist here in Turkey. And I'm very glad that Josh Sigurdsson has come to appreciate that, and he's got a much stronger and deeper appreciation for ancient history than I do. Although I'm tell those dogs to quiet down. Hey, dogs, shut up. It's not gonna work. I guess I could shut the window, but that would obstruct the view. There are some kind of nasty dogs that hang out in the Sultanahmet area. I don't know if those are the ones right now. You are close to all that Kurdistan madness going on right now. What are you hearing on the ground over there about all that? So, actually, Josh Sigurdson and I were super, super close. Speaking of Haran, I looked on a map, is something like 20 kilometers away from one of the major battle sites. I don't know if let's call it a battleground or what, but so there's a Syrian town, Tel Abyad, that's a border town, and that was one of the focal points of the fighting a week or two ago. And yeah, I checked. We were like 20 kilometers away from there. Just, I don't know, 15, 20-minute drive or something. Now, we were not in so-called Kurdistan when the fighting broke out. We were there right before it broke out. And right now, I am not in so-called Kurdistan. I'm in Istanbul. There are many Kurds here, and I'm starting to talk to them. I just got back in town yesterday or 2 days ago. I lose track of time. A lot to discuss with regarding the situation between Turkey and Syria and the Kurds. Too much for this broadcast. I was talking. Josh Sigurdson interviewed me on Wham. So, you know what, Rob? Would you do me a favor and throw in a link in the chat to Wham? Just so then everyone can go check out all the stuff on World Alternative Media. So Josh Sigurdson recently interviewed me. I don't remember what the video is called or titled. He recently interviewed me about that situation with Turkey and Syria and the Kurds, and a lot more is at stake than just that. But yeah, we were talking for about 30 minutes, and we could go on and on and on about that. Complicated situation, many angles to it. I recently wrote an article on Bulgaria Analytica. Maybe I could pull that up, hopefully, discussing the relationship between Erdogan and Trump and the US and Turkey as it relates to the situation with Turkey and Syria and the Kurds. I did just manage to find that article, and I'll throw it in the chat right now. There we go. Someone's saying too close for comfort. You're close to too close for. That should be it. Do the Kurds feel abandoned by Trump like the U.S. media keeps telling us? All right, let's discuss it very briefly, since I don't have time to go on and on about it. Something that I brought up in the interview with Josh Sigurdson is that not all Kurds. World Alternative Media on YouTube. I'm too old to know how to post a link. Just look it up, please. All right, I'll get that link. It shouldn't be too difficult. Yeah, so something I was discussing in the interview with Josh Sigurdson is that the Kurds are not all one and the same. They don't. There we go. I threw in a link to Josh Sigurdson's YouTube channel, World Alternative Media. So there are many Kurds with many different perspectives, with different viewpoints on the current situation playing out in Syria and the situation as a whole. I've traveled a little bit across the Kurdish region of Turkey. I've been to Diyarbakir, for instance, which I call the de facto Kurdish capital of Turkey, something like that. I put out a video about that a couple of years back. Got me pissed off some people, but you're gonna get people upset regardless of what you say around here on these matters. Well, so in Diyarbakir, you're gonna find a lot of people who are very supportive of the PKK, the Kurdistan Workers' Party, the group that has been at war with the Turkish state for decades and is designated a terrorist organization by the US and much of the world. And the PKK carries out bombings, has carried out bombings frequently over the years. Many civilians have been killed, not just Turkish police and military, although they are the typical targets. And there are offshoots of the PKK, like the YPG in Syria, are now rebranded as the SDF. So the YPG, with whom Turkey is basically at war with right now, is the Syrian Kurdish militant group, the military faction of the Syrian Kurdish semi-autonomous region, which is now a very complicated matter because Turkey's has been driving back the YPG, and this little Rojava project of creating a mini state within Syria, arguably a Kurdish state within Syria. That project is facing some major hurdles now because Turkey wants none of it, and Turkey sent its military in. Now, there are many Kurds who want to break away from Turkey or from Syria or from Iraq and live in Kurdistan. But there are also some Kurds who, in fact, are Erdogan supporters. I don't, sorry, multitasking. There's not a single viewpoint that all Kurds share. Some Kurds are getting caught up in this and are even coming under fire. Say, like Kurds living in southern Turkey could end up coming under fire from the YPG. It's a very complicated situation, different factions, different perspectives, and there isn't an immediate solution to the matter. I'm trying to remember what the initial question was. The initial question was, do Kurds feel abandoned by Trump like the US media keeps telling us? So I would say many do, but it's complicated. There, I agree with your political description. Turkey wants to destroy the mountains in Iraq where Armenian mercenaries and the PKK backbone. They want to destroy the PKK. Okay, yeah. So actually, like I think, like the commenter is saying, in fact, so the PKK to some extent retreated to northern Iraq, to the mountains in northern Iraq, and for several years since the ceasefire between Turkey and the PKK fell apart. I guess that was back in 2015. There have been operations, and there have been times in which Turkey has been outright bombing the PKK in northern Iraq, and there have been a few military operations now into northern Syria, including the ongoing one. And Turkey says that the YPG is one and the same with the PKK. The U.S. has begged to differ for a long time, but given the very complicated nature of things, where you have conflicting alliances, it shouldn't come as too huge of a shock that the U.S. has so-called abandoned the Kurds. The U.S. has for a while been clashing with Turkey over the fact that the U.S. was partnered with the Syrian Kurds in the fight against ISIS. It was a point of conflict for several years. And all along, Turkey's made it clear that it wants to drive back the Syrian Kurds, the YPG, off its border. And to some extent, this actually came up a year or two back. I guess it was something like a year and a half ago when Turkey entered Syria in the operation targeting the city of Afrin. Back then, the U.S. did back off to some extent. Not that there's so many U.S. soldiers stationed there to begin with. But the U.S. basically gave the go-ahead to that, or maybe it was the Euphrates Shield operation. I might be mixing up the two. Anyway, there have been few military operations now into Turkish military operations into northern Syria over the past few years, and the U.S. basically gave the okay to that, and I think at one point even told the Syrian Kurds they need to move to the other side of the Euphrates River as Turkey was demanding. It's complicated. I know all the logistics, or don't know all the logistics or background. I think U.S. should ever bail on our allies or those who support us. Yeah, so I didn't want to delve so deep into this, but I see more people are tuned in, so I guess it's all right. I guess it's all right. We continue on with this topic. So yeah, I mean, there are different things to weigh. On the one hand, Trump says you got to end the endless wars, and even though Trump's getting hammered for his stance with regard to the Kurds, I think there are many people in the U.S. who have Middle East fatigue, who agree, yeah, they want an end to the endless wars. They don't want to be paying for troops and sending troops to fight and die in the Middle East forever. On the other hand, what kind of message does that send if you are allied with this group in a fight against ISIS, which which at least was, maybe still is, a very deadly organization, for lack of a better word. And then a couple of years pass by and you say, nope, we're not going to defend you, and we're going to let Turkey come on in, Turkish troops come on in and run you out of there. So it's a predicament. And the U.S. has arguably allied with several factions within Syria that have ended up fighting, clashing with one another. So, I mean, there are arguments to be made on both sides. LL, keep looking over your shoulder. You may piss off someone there, and we don't want that. Yeah, it's... But, I accept this. Maybe I'll talk about that sometime over the coming days while I'm here. I'm incredibly grateful that I can keep coming back to this country that I really love and cherish, and at this point in my life might be my favorite country in the world. But I understand there are risks that come with merely talking about these issues here, so let the chips fall as they may. Comment saying Trump is wise to let the YPG, PKK go, allow Akbar, and yes, PKK has murdered 50,000 civilians in Turkey only. So, you see, that's a fair point, and it represents, I would say, a sentiment, a frustration. Someone's Satoshi saying hello from Sweden. Hello in Sweden, Satoshi. I hope BTC is doing well at the moment. Haven't checked lately. Yeah, so I don't think a lot of people in the U.S. are so familiar with what is a very, very common sentiment in Turkey, at least among Turks, but not just among Turks, among other ethnic groups as well, that the U.S. has partnered with an offshoot of a terror group, at least designated by itself, by the U.S. government, that has killed many, many people, that has set off many bombs and carried out many attacks, and that has been at war with the Turkish state for decades. And I even find in discussions with some Kurds here that they're quite supportive of military operations against the PKK as well as the YPG. I think there are quite a few Kurds who are indeed supportive of Turkey using its military to repel Kurdish militants. May seem bizarre for you to hear that, but that's the case. But then likewise, as I said before, there are many Kurds who are outright supporters of the PKK. And many have been thrown in jail because of that. And many have been thrown in jail even if they're not outright supporters of the PKK. Um, let's see, did I miss any? No, I don't think I missed any comments. I've got some other things I need to address here, so I need to wrap it up. But I'm glad that I see people are tuned in more so than usual, even though I didn't announce this. I think over the next several weeks, given that I plan on being here for the most part, I'll be able to stick to the Sunday stream format. I hope to be streaming or at least vlogging more regularly than that. Possibly, I might even start a second channel in which I just focus more on travel stuff. The truth is often bizarre, Rob says. Politics makes for strange bedfellows. I'll add to that. There are many strange bedfellows in this region, and there are many people in bed with one guy on one day and in bed with the enemy on the other day, or the enemy on the other day. Very common in this region. In that regard, I'm not terribly surprised that the U.S. has abandoned the Kurds, for lack of a better word. Although, read my Bulgaria Analytica article, it's not like the U.S. as a whole uh, wants to abandon the Kurds. There's obviously a lot of conflict between Trump and bureaucrats in Washington, among others. I wanted to mention that I was traveling around Israel. Satoshi said, I've seen your videos from various refugee camps. Great work. Yeah, the refugee issue ties into this as well. There are more threats coming from Erdogan of the refugee bomb. A bit too much to discuss now, given that I need to wrap this up. Like I was saying, I just spent a couple weeks. I was actually traveling around Israel with my father, something I'm very grateful to have done. Fritz saying whoop whoop. Uh, lots of people tuned in. Thank you for the whoop whoop comment. Glad whoop whoop that you're tuned in. I hope to see you joining me in Istanbul sometime soon. Yeah, so I was just traveling around Israel with my father. It was a once-in-a-lifetime trip for him in that regard, for me as well. Only time he's ever been to Israel. Very grateful for that. If you want to hear something about my Israel travels, I guess I could bring that up. But Turkey was and is the focal point of my coverage as of late, and will be in the coming days and at least over the next month. Something I'm very excited about, very happy to be back at what I'd like to call my home base, that being Istanbul. And the sun has set here in Istanbul on over the historic peninsula, probably my favorite area, but it's a city full of great areas. Which, yeah, I'd like to bring you more vlog footage of that. So hopefully I'll be coming to you more often than just on the Sunday evenings. But stay tuned for Sunday evening streams over the next several weeks, and stay tuned for the other vlogs that I've yet to release, like Göbekli Tepe and Nemrut. Maybe I'll release some Haran footage. I didn't do so much there. All right, this is the last comment I'm going to take on the geopolitical situation here. The mainstream Turkish stance on the issue is, quote, Turkey is in the NATO, thus an ally of the U.S. We want them to favor us over the YPG. From my understanding, that is pretty mainstream sentiment here. Ephesus in Turkey. Once I just missed going there. I was in Izmir. I need to go back sometime. Yeah, obviously there's so much to see and do in this amazing country. So let's try to leave it at that. You know what? If you have any requests for my coverage from Istanbul for the next few weeks or so, please leave a comment, and I will seriously consider that and do my best to bring to you what kind of coverage that you're interested in about the region, but specifically here from Istanbul. Might be talking more about travel as well. It's an incredible time to travel here. So much bang for the buck. This has a lot to do with the geopolitical situation, with the lira, the devaluation of the lira. But yeah, I highly recommend coming to Turkey, even though there's seemingly a lot of craziness in the country and in the region. And I'm, yeah, very blessed to be here. So I think that wraps. God bless. Thank you. God bless all of you. Um, yeah, I think that wraps up for now. I've got other issues to handle, but I promise I'm going to be coming. Fritz said I would be interested in a comparison between the ancient and current Istanbul. What has changed and what has remained? Actually, I've got a Istanbul playlist, or is it just a Turkey playlist? I've done some videos several years back highlighting some of the very old and historic and significant sites here in Istanbul. Done a bunch of videos on that. Yeah, look up Istanbul on my channel. You should find some stuff. But yeah, I got to wrap things up. So thank you very much to everyone who tuned in. Like I said, if you've got requests for specific coverage and focal points here in Istanbul and Turkey, please send them in comments or email me, message me, etc. And I'll make note of them. So teşekkürlerdim. Thank you very much for watching this Sunday stream from Istanbul, and güle güle. Goodbye for now.